Okay. So with that little recap that we just had, a little refreshment of past classes. So today, the previous discussion was joining sentence and clauses. This is about joining sentence and fragments. When you're joining fragments, there are some things that you have to keep in mind, like essential, non-essential clauses. You have to look out for apostrophes, and you have to look out for double conjunctions. You have to look out for subordinate conjunctions and so on. There will be sometimes, some of them will be in, yeah, sometimes you will find double commas, double dashes, double colons. Yes. So first we'll be working on the comma rules. Okay. Some of them, like handful of them, which are essentially helpful to start with, especially joining sentences and fragments. Now let's move on to remember the past discussion we had, that you all come to know that subordinate conjunctions like after, although, because, as, however, before, despite, even though, if, though, since, unless, until, while, when, wherever, whereas, or always. What type of clauses are they? When you find a sentence beginning with these subordinate conjunctions, it is understood that that's a dependent clause. This is how you identify clauses. Okay. And next thing, we also learned about how to separate two independent clauses either by periods, semicolons. Next, you should remember that you cannot, these two, period and semicolons, can never be used to separate a sentence from its fragments. Okay. That means you can't separate an independent clause from a dependent clause. So for that, what do we need? We need something better than semicolon. Okay. Semicolons are very exceptional ones. They are very unique. I got to tell you, I don't know if I told you this or not. Like students used to write essays along with the SAT test. They have to submit that additional test, and it was like they are supposed to write a 500-word essay, and within that 500 word, only semicolons have to be used once. So unlike commas, periods, dashes, semicolon is like, it's pretty majestic, right? I mean to say, it's like more for a stylistic aspect, not grammatical sense. Okay. And SAT will never test or prefer to test any stylistic aspects like in grammar, like in essays. Okay, to add little more power to your write-ups, or to flex that you are a grammar Nazi, or you know something, or you're a great editor, or you know how to edit. Only semicolons are used as such tools. But yes, some of the questions also test because they also are considered as grammar tools. So yeah. Now let's move on. So these are the 3 points that we'll be discussing extensively in this coming 2 classes. Next, the rule number 1 with subordinate conjunctions. What does it say? So when a dependent clause begins with one of the subordinate conjunctions before an independent comma must be placed between the clauses. That's exactly what I've just discussed. Now look at these examples. So why is sentence first statement incorrect? If you look at the statement, you have those bold fonted words. So this is our subordinate conjunction, although often you get question with all those. Okay. Frank Sinatra never studied music formally and learned his songs by ear. Means he was somebody who had learned by himself. So there is something that is missing out. Uh, More or less, it's more like a fused sentence. It needs punctuation. So immediately when you find sentence like this, you're supposed to correct it by placing a comma just after the first sentence. Okay, so you have an subordinate conjunction, and this is your subject, this is your verb, and this is the rest of the sentence. This is my first sentence with, this is my first, what is it? It's a DC, and you have a comma and IC. Remember this, DC, comma, IC, or IC, comma, DC. This is what you have to work with commas. Am I clear? Now, otherwise, you can also look at the option with because. Again, tested. Because is always tested, comes as your dependent clause. Okay. Did you get it now? How to put a comma with DCs and ICs, between DC and IC with subordinate conjunctions? This is the rule. Clear? Chalo, say something clear, not sure, 50-50, okay. All right, fine. If you won't speak, let me go ahead. All right, good. I got one hint. Now, rule number 2. Chalo, let's make it rule number 2. No comma for conjunctive adverbs. You are not supposed to. Okay, this is exception. A very important exception. We do not need any punctuation of any sort, not just any comma. Okay. So, comma is not needed for sentence beginning with independent clause except in case of strong conjunctive adverbs. No comma for conjunctive adverbs. So, although, though, even though, we are not going to place comma. Okay, this is incorrect. I mean, we are going to place comma. Okay. If this is the case, Frank Sinatra became one of the most famous singers of 20th century, comma, although he never learned to read music. Okay, I have a point over here. If we are starting, okay, there can be a chance like you'll be asked, it's like, although, comma, this is never going to happen, okay? But for however, you can put a comma. Remember this, okay? General rule, a very general rule. For although you cannot place a comma like this. But with however, sentence beginning with however, you can use comma. This is not tested, but for your general information. Am I clear, everyone? So we have an independent clause here, a subject that begins. But if it has although in between the sentence, we are supposed to place a comma before the transitional word. Am I clear? This is rule number 2. Okay. So when in case if you find there is no comma between before although, you are supposed to place when it comes in between the sentence. Clear? Next, rule number 3, using ing to join the clauses. What exactly is this? Ing, what are ings? When do we use ing? Yes. Rule number 3, to join the clauses, if you want to join clauses, you can change the verb forms to ings. That means you're converting a verb into a noun form. Nothing but you're converting that into a subject. It's gerunds, right? Gerund phrases. Very good, Anish. This is tested like crazy. This is like you have to make up your mind. Gerunds are going to happen. Gerunds are like in thing. They're trending in digital SAT. Okay. Now look at the example here. So the same thing, same example has been chosen for giving your understanding about the correct or incorrect sentences. If you want to place a comma, if you find an ing form in between the sentence, let's read it. Let's see how we can read it like this. Formally learning his songs by ear. So never studied music formally. You can have a period. Okay. Learning his songs by ear. That's again a new sentence, but that becomes a fragment, right? So we can have learning by his ears and put a comma in between, right? So two sentences being joined by placing a comma, right? So look out for these ing forms. Rule number 4, comma plus any verb. These are exceptionals. You are tested on this, comma with and taking ing forms. Okay. So comma, you know that, right? We place a comma before and look out for the verb forms. If you find comma and, you can actually, these are both synonymical. I mean, you will never be tested with commas and commas with. Only one of them will be mostly tested because comma with is grammatically correct. Hence, you are tested as one of the options. So if you find comma with an ing type of verb, then you will go with this option. Okay. So how are you tested? Different ways of testing your comma rule skills. One, by using comma. Where are you using? Commas are placed between the clauses. What type of clauses? with subordinate conjunction clauses, which is DC, comma, IC. Then you have comma rule with conjunctive adverbs. How do you use that? You can use comma just before a subordinate conjunction if it is in between the sentence. Next, using ing forms, you're very much tested with ings if you're joining two sentences. How do you join them? Without a punctuation in between two sentences is like a fused sentence. This is like more like a run-on sentence. Okay. Now, how do we correct these run-ons? Simple, by placing comma between the previous sentence and the sentence that begins with or that has ing forms, okay, which is gerunds. That's rule number 4 or 3, yes. And we have with and, comma, and, or comma with. Most commonly tested with this particular option. Next is clause beginning with which. Now, when do we use which? There is one particular pronoun called relative pronouns. Under that, we have who, which, what, and why. All right. So I'm not going into details of essentials and non-essential at this point of time. But please remember, if you find which without a comma, your job is to look out for sentence or option with which, comma, and which. Am I clear? As you read, because which is a relative clause, it creates relative clauses. So we need a comma. Clear? Now, rule number 6. I hope you're understanding all the rules. Yes. So rule number 6, what is it? Very, very simple. Probably you're already aware of it, but for the sake of registering the thing in your mind as you're tested on it, so you cannot use fanboys like for, and, not, but, or, yet, or so in the same sentence where subordinate conjunctions are seen. I repeat, you cannot use fanboys and subordinate conjunctions in the same sentence, right? That can become a grammatically incorrect sentence. Now, this is what I was talking about. So you cannot have although and comma but. How do we correct it? That's our point. Once you identify there's an error like this, you will look out for options that will either completely eliminate the conjunction, fanboy, and then you will look out. See, it's the best way to correct the sentence is eliminate those conjunctions. Lesser the conjunctions, better the sentence, right? So although here you can see, you can have although and continue writing about it. This is its is what type of pronoun? You're referring back to the sentence. So for a reader, it is understandable that here we are talking about the previous sentence. Its climate means the place, the landscapes and all that we are talking about. Okay. Next, you can remove the subordinate conjunction and leave the fanboy as it is. So look out for these options. When do we have that kind of situation? When you have both fanboy and subordinate conjunctions in the same clause. This is how you correct it. That's rule number 6. Let's work on the rule number 6 option. Now, as you have learned the rule, now start working on it. All right. Remember, we need to use DC, comma IC or IC, comma DC. That's the point. Okay. Let me see. Only 3 responses. Okay. Good. Good, Anish. Mona, that's correct. Yes, I think most of you got it correct. Why is my chat going up? Okay. All right. Chaitra, that's correct. D is correct. How? Anybody can explain? Can you unmute? Ma'am, we are fine with the chats, ma'am. Why are you asking all these things? Don't see. Yes, Mazu, that's correct. Anmita, that's absolutely correct. I hope you got the context. So what are we reading here? For example, although. Remember what did I tell you? Although. So this is a dependent clause. Although the pompano has substantial layer of fat beneath its skin, how will we separate the other part? It, comma, it is. So we are separating the rest of the sentence with a comma. Correct. So as per the rule is concerned, that's how we place a comma. Now, working with the non-essential clauses. What are non-essential clauses? What are non-essentials? As the name states, you will be having your tested actually on these non-essential clauses. Okay. So from you will get at least 1 or 2 questions. You will find them in middle of the sentence, and you need paired punctuations for this. So you will be expected to use 2 commas, maybe, or 2 dashes, or 2 parentheses. Okay. Now, where? How are we going to use? Let's look at some of those questions. Before that, let's understand, maybe some of you are not familiar with this concept of essential and non-essential. Let's go do some basics and get back to the question. All right. As you have the definition, these are sentences containing the word. How do you recognize essentials? Very simple. With this pronoun, it is a directional pronoun. It talks about something before that. Okay. And they indicate information that is essential, that is necessary to that sentence. As such, essential clauses do not get punctuations. So if you find that in the sentence, you do not need to put, you see, that's how. Not every time you're expected to think about punctuation. It is not mandatory that you have to plug in a punctuation, right? So you have to look out for these things. Next, what about essential, non-essential? So essential, you will recognize by that. You do not need any punctuations. Now, how do we work out with non-essentials? Just contrast to the essentials. Here, we are including information that's actually like too much of information. You do not need all that. Like, you know what? Some people have this habit of adding a lot of information. They said it, but they just are not happy with what they said. They want to add little more information. And here we are talking about our authors or writers. They just do it for the sake of, little more exaggeration, or want to elaborate their expression or some statements that they made. Hence, they end up writing non-essential clauses. This is part of write-ups, okay? Very common. Now, your job is to how to plug in commas for these non-essentials, because for essential clauses, you need no punctuations. Then who are we supposed to work with? Non-essentials. They're waiting for us to plug in something for them, right? It can be 2 dashes, 2 commas, or so on. Okay. Now, instead of non-essential clauses, like I said, they add a lot of information. Okay. And how can we recognize them? Let's see how we can recognize them. Okay. So they can be removed from the sentence, and the sentence still be a sentence with its main point. So all that masala that they are adding are due to something called as relative clauses. Okay. Now, what are relative clauses? Anyone? Relative clauses. How do we identify relative clauses? Yes, relative clauses are nothing but non-essential clauses, but there is one demarcation over here. Not everything is a non-essential clause or relative clause. Yes, yes, Anish, yes. So sentences with relative pronouns. What are relative pronouns? Basically, pronouns are personal pronouns are I, you, we, they, he, she. Referencing pronouns or relative pronouns are that. Sorry, directional pronouns are that, this, these, those. And what about relative pronouns? Yes, anyone in the chat box? Why do I find your chats are like pretty dull today? Anything specific? Like, are you missing out? Somebody won while you expected somebody, your favorite team didn't win. Are you still in that pain? Come out. We have big day to do, right? We have uh, the D-Day waiting for you. Yes. What are relative pronouns? Come on, everyone, be active. Otherwise, I'm going to close the session. Now, this is not going to work out for me. You have to be proactive. Even though these are basics, I want to make it like a reinforcement for you. Yes. Hello, what are relative pronouns? Perfect. Good. Good. Relative pronouns basically are the WH questions. Okay, simple. All the WH questions: who, whose, where, when, what, and which. These are all relative pronouns. Okay, they talk about the location or about something, about the noun. When we're replacing these relative pronouns, we are actually replacing the nouns and telling us where exactly that so-called noun is or who exactly we are talking about. So basically, you're adding a lot of information which we already spoke about. The reader has got some information about the noun or the subject, but you're just adding little more masala to it. Remember, when there are essential clauses like that, you do not need a comma. This was what I've mentioned here in the previous slide. So like this, the movie that opens on Friday looks good. Now, if I unplug that, read without that, try out reading with that, without that, remove the word, remove the, remove that and read. Will it make sense? If it is making sense, then something is wrong with you. Okay, the sentence is totally non-sync if you are removing that. The movie opens on Friday looks good. So is it telling us anything? It is like, it has to be directional. Which movie are you talking about? Right? If I remove that, it is not making any sense. So then the sentence looks quite non-sync, and grammatically also it is incorrect. We need some referencing pronouns for that. So this referencing pronoun or directional pronoun is nothing but that. The puppy that Sally adopted is cute. So we have an independent clause. Opens on Friday looks good. Is your? Yes, it's a fragment to connect these two things. We need that, but we do not need any punctuations over here. Here. Now, look at the other side. To my right, you can find the non-essential examples. The movie, comma, which opens on Friday. If I remove that part, this part, if I unplug this part, let's say I have removed this. Okay, which opens on Friday. The part that is between the commas, if I remove that and read, the movie looks good. So even though I'm talking about something that's going to open on Friday, but still I have a subject and verb here. So it's again a complete sentence. Correct? This is just an additional information. Now look at this. The governor, did you identify the non-essentials? So your job is to identify what is essential clause, what is non-essential. Essentials always comes with that. And so you need not plug any sort of punctuations. Am I clear with the essentials? If I'm clear, let's move on talking about non-essentials. Non-essentials often, not often, always comes with the relative clause, which are which, who, where, whom, whose, and so on. Okay, so even if I unplug, if I remove that information, additional information, then even then the sentence makes sense. So it has to be meaningful, even if I remove the relative clause. Just read the ones that I'm adding right now. The governor has high approval rate. See, even if I remove the fragment between, the phrase between the commas, which starts with relative clause, relative pronouns, hence it is called a relative clause. The sentence that starts with which, who, where is known as a relative clause. Got it? So anything that has a relative pronoun in the beginning of the sentence, that is nothing but your relative clause. And those are just information giving. So how do we separate it from our main clause? By just unplugging it and see if it is making sense even without the relative pronoun. Then that means it is a non-essential. Without its presence, the sentence still is meaningful. So your job is to plug in or look out for commas, look out for which and which always comes with comma, which is tested. Okay, that and which are tested. When you see that, you do not need any punctuations. When you see which, you should definitely think about commas, or otherwise you can also look out for two commas, two dashes, or two parentheses. For example, non-essential clauses, comma, which are not essential to the sentence meaning and grammatical integrity. Let's say I have unplugged, I have completely removed this. Now read out to yourself. Non-essential clauses are fun to include. Yes, it is still meaningful. Hence, I have to separate this relative clause from the main clause either by commas, or two dashes, or two parentheses, means two brackets. So whatever comes in between the commas are non-essential or just the information, additional information. All right. So this is how we use two commas, two dashes, or two parentheses when you are looking at relative pronouns. Am I clear, everyone? Now that's what is tested. Now why should I learn, or why should you learn about this? Because you are tested on this. Now how are you tested? Very simple. There is some inconsistency in your options, or this is frequently tested. So you have to create balance. Let's say if you find option like this, there's a comma over here and with a dash. This is definitely not going to be our answer. We are supposed to look at options that starts with a comma and ends with a comma. Or you should look at options that starts with a dash and ends with a dash. If the sentence relative clause begins with a comma, the closing part should also have a comma. If the relative clause begins with a dash, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to close it with a dash. Clear? Am I clear or not? Yes or no? Interesting, right? Let me see. I have so many questions for you coming up in your practice questions and for your test. Then you will not run to me and say, ma'am, how was it incorrect? I put this. You didn't work out on. So now let's work on this non-essential phrase type of sample. Try this out. Try this out. Explain me if you can unmute yourself. See, I always believe in teaching someone. If you learned a new rule, always teach it. And it will be registered in your mind forever. Okay? Teach it to someone who is not familiar with these things. They don't teach me. I already know the rules. So teach it for everyone, all your friends. Yes, Chaitra? Do you want to teach us, Chaitra? Chaitra, do you want to teach us? Come on, make some efforts. Why do you think it is D?
I don't really know how to explain it, but
Okay.
with
Right
all
now.
the given options, it's the one that makes the most sense. Because see,
Okay, so you're not even applying the rule.
I'm just
Going by the sense does not work for writing, Chaitra. Okay, keep this in mind. Why are you learning these rules? Why are you attending these sessions? Is to have a briefing about the rules and the rules that are workable and functionable for immediately finding the error and fixing them. Okay, going by, I feel this is okay with the reading part. For comprehensive reading is good. But here for writing module, you're exclusively tested on rules. So please don't make this error. Good that Chaitra, you have unmuted. Though your answer is correct, I appreciate you for that, for being very honest. I don't know how to explain, that's fine. But the second part is absolutely not okay for me. Please be mindful. I just taught you one thing. What did I tell you? If your sentence, if your sentence starts with a comma, here you go, there it starts with a comma. A toothless, no, here. A toothless, so this is where you have to fill in a comma, right? So comma has substantial layer of fat beneath its skin, comma. Here starts the next sentence. It is essentially found in the warm waters around Florida and Gulf of Mexico. Guys, please never make this mistake of going by, I think, I feel. No, please. It should be grammatically correct, and that correctness comes only if you're familiar as well as very confident with the rule. All right. No, dear. Non-essentials always comes with what? What did I tell you? Non-essentials comes with WH questions. Anish, that's a good question. However, just remember, you have independent clause, semicolon independent clause. You cannot have relative clauses. You can have subordinate conjunctions like the strong transitions. Okay? Don't forget the basics. We started with basics, right? Have I cleared your doubt, Anish? List of commas? Yes, of course. List, that's what I told you. List within list. Of course. Yes. DC comma IC. That's what we are trying to prove here, right? This is IC. We have DC comma IC and vice versa. You can do it with the both. Okay. But you cannot have DC semicolon IC. No, that's not going to happen. Nor you have IC relative clause and something else, or relative pronoun like which, who, whose. No, you can't have it that way. Rule is very simple. Here you have to plug in two commas because the sentence starts with comma here. So it has to close with a comma. Okay, great. That's the way you learn things. Please ask questions and make it a point. Come out, because all these years you only work grammar by your sense. Okay, I feel my sentence formation is correct because I know how to, because that's okay. While speaking, that's fine. And all these years you must be doing your grammar, grammar sections in your general English this manner. But this is exclusively tested, hence you have to work it in that manner. Am I clear, Chaitra? Please be careful, because you might end up making incorrect answers just because you're not following the rules. Here SAT is tested like that, okay? So you have to follow the rules. Otherwise, why are these sessions for, right? Okay, transitions. Yes, go ahead, please, Chaitra. Please go ahead. You're saying something.
No, I'll definitely pay more attention to the
Yes,
rules.
please pay more attention so that you're not losing score just by following your senses. Sometimes your senses might not be in your favor on that particular day. Maybe the previous sentence or the previous sections you have attempted, maybe you didn't do it well. Touch wood, I don't want that to happen. But you never know. You might panic and your senses might not be in your favor, my dear. Not all the time. Maybe you're running out of time and you cannot blindly put, tukka marna. Don't do that. All right, so we have already got the answer. Now transitions between the sentence with the commas. So transitions that come in between the sentence. So for example, is a transitional word. So how do we put a comma in between? Yes, try this out. What's your answer? Everyone? D. Okay, good. Why is it D, Anish? Now don't tell me I can't explain. My senses, from my sixth sense, the rule is simple. If you are having a transitional expression or transitional word in between the sentences, you are supposed to look out for, yes, For example, the Pampino, see, Baki like what? B and C, does it make any sense? For example, that Pampino has substance. Which Pampino? Why are you directing to? For example, is not supposed to come with directional preposition, sorry, pronouns. And it cannot, for example, is already a transition. Why do we need because the Pampino? And you cannot use although, it's again a transition. For example, is a transition, although is a transition. Now, sensibly, we are left with, for example, now here comes the subject, the Pampano, has a, which has is what? It's a subject, a helping verb, not a subject, sorry, a helping verb, a substantial layer of fat beneath its. Now you have a contrast here. That's good. Okay, because it starts with a comma, it ends with a comma. Clear, everyone? Yeah. So your answer D is perfectly correct. I think you guys need this, right? You're all doing pretty well. Excuse me for my great drawing. Okay. Or transform to cat, woman, and man. Yes, yes, that's correct. So for example, we are trying to create a contrast over here. So it closes with but, and yeah. So we need option D here. Am I clear? Transitions in between the sentence need commas, right? All right. So rules are like pretty much you need to work on the essentials, non-essentials, and transition that comes between. Let's also look at redundancy. What's the meaning of redundancy? What's the meaning of redundancy? Redundant. Redundant? Yes. Redundant? Like if I say there are excess, abundant number of. Excess and abundant, don't you think they are like same? Yes, they're not longer useful, but while reading, yes, no longer useful means redundant means repetition. You're repeating the same expression in another words. Okay. For example, nouns are repeated sometimes. The pronouns are repeated. If you read, okay, this is an old version. This is your actual paper SAT, but just for the sake of your understanding, I got this redundancy thing. Okay, even for reading, you should identify these things. Now, we are testing 12, question 12. So the street is a sea of red. Okay, fine, I understand. Again, we started with the noun. Red is the traditional. Don't you think that it is repeated? The word noun is repeated? Yes. Yes, excess means something that is repeated and we don't need that noun. I'm already familiar that you mentioned about red. Why do I need twice? Why do I need to use the noun twice? So your answer will be the street is a sea of red, comma, is the traditional Chinese color. So you can plug in maybe red, then you have comma, is the traditional. So you're actually talking about rest of the sentence, okay? It's traditional Chinese color of luck and happiness. Yes. Why? Why is it? We cannot use that and semicolon. Anish, how come you're making mistake repeatedly with semicolons? The semicolon rule is very simple. We just need to use semicolon. I see semicolon. I see semicolon, strong adverbs or strong transitions. Semicolon, if you have list within list. Okay. So that's the simple rule and this is ruled out. Semicolon. In other words, we cannot have preposition. This is called prepositional phrase. No, not at all. Red, again, in addition, semicolon, not at all. We are left with red, comma, is the traditional Chinese color of luck and happiness. Okay. So we will remove this part. The street is a sea of red, comma, is the traditional Chinese color. No, okay, red. And then you have the traditional Chinese color of luck and happiness. The street is a sea of red, comma, the traditional Chinese color of luck and happiness. Okay. This is one. This is two. Send two sentences. Since we do not have semicolon to connect two ICs, remaining all of them are non-sync. They are not at all connecting to our semicolon requirements. So we will look out for comma. Okay. So this makes sense as per the. Ma'am, is there this rule, semicolon, transition? Yeah. What are transitions? Moreover is a transition, right? What type of transition is moreover? Yes. Continuer. Moreover. Additional. Yes, Mona. True. So these are called strong transitions. Only a handful of them. Please go through the old videos, the previous videos of transitional words or with your punctuations with semicolon. I've been telling this for the past half an hour, and throughout the session, I was telling you about strong transitions, right? This is the combination. But good, multiple times if you listen, then you won't make mistake. Only if they come in between the sentence, okay? Am I clear? All right. So don't get confused. It's very simple. Huh, Mona? Right. All right. Seems like you're all well equipped with all the comma rules. Let's do one more. Like I said, we always need comma before which. Again, it's a good example of redundancy. Now, let me tell you how. Paying tuition. Paying tuition. We are working for question 38. This is an old SAT question. For your practice sake, I got this. Okay. So I wanted to be very specific with each question type. So this might come, you will understand how to do this. So paying, what is paying? It's a gerund. Gerands are nothing but nouns. So this is your subject. Paying for tuition, also for tuition, also helps is your verb. So this is a complete sentence. Paying for tuition also helps businesses retain employees. Retaining employees, again, it's a repetition. It's called redundancy. How do I remove this redundancy when I'm combining two clauses? How do I do it? Yes. How do I do that? What's your answer for that? Perfect, Anish. Why only Anish has answers for everything? Like Baki sab what? Huh? Baki sab what? Sitting on the recliner? Munching something? Enjoying your AC air and what? Why is it C, by the way? Anyone who can understand, make us understand, explain us? What did I tell you? This is a redundancy, repetition of the same. We are actually talking about employees. We are already talking about the retention of employees. Now, why do I repeat this again? How do I remove this repetition? Yes, and the rule is very simple. We need a comma before relative clauses. We already discussed, because if you use which, basically it acts like a non-essential clause. And we need that non-essential element, and we need that to combine these two sentences. So paying for tuition also helps businesses retain employees, comma, which is important not only because it ensures a skilled and experienced workforce, but also actually here we need a comma. Not only, but no, okay, we don't need a comma because this is that type of transition, not only, but also. So we don't need a comma here. Okay. So This is correct. Employees. So answer C. Remember, if you have WH questions, we need a comma. If we have that, we do not need a comma nor any type of punctuations. No punctuations for essential elements. Punctuations for non-essential elements. Now, non-essentials are recognized by the word by WH questions. Clear? Sure. Let's do another one. Okay. I have purposefully bought this from the old SAT questions. How about IC and INGs? Please read out. Typically, the I sheet, okay, we have our subject over here. Begins is your verb to show evidence of the thawing. What's the meaning of thawing? Huh? Very common if you are using any canned food, okay, or frozen foods. You will read this in your instructions. What's thawing? It's a process, by the way. Any guesses? No, no guesses. I want a definition of it. What does it mean? To thaw means what? Okay, I will consider your answers also for these options, but I just want to find whether you guys know it or not. They're talking about ice and they're talking about thawing. What does it mean?
Ma'am,
Yes.
it is the process of ice becoming a liquid.
Yes, dear. Very good. So the frozen ones, you can easily identify. Ice sheet. So something they're talking about ice sheet means the melting of or partial melting. Okay. You need to do that before you actually start cooking anything. Very common in instructions given for frozen foods. But this is not about frozen food, just for your understanding. The ice sheet is your subject, begins is your verb to show evidence of thawing in late what? Late summer. We need 13th. Try out for 13th. What's your answer for 13th? Yes. Yes. Yes, Anish. Good. So your answer is, girls, try it out. Sorry, not girls. Yeah, everyone, try it out. Thawing in late summer. This follows. What is this follows? We're already doing thawing, so why do we need it? Thawing in late summer. And what's the answer? Yes, ing before ing. So your answer is summer, comma, following several weeks of. So in late summer. And there's one more thing you can remember, okay? This is actually workable for verb tenses. You already have ing here. Look out, there's another verb coming up immediately. So it has to have a consistency. This is basically for the subject tenses, but I'm just telling you, even though these are basically your, sorry, ing is used here for, what did I tell you? Here is your independent clause. This sentence has a subject and a verb. And we need a comma and ing as per the rule. So how do we look out for? Look out for options that has comma and following. And I was talking about subject tense also, right? So here we have ing. And to have a balance of all the verbs, you should also look out for the verb, immediate verb that will have ing forms. Am I clear? This is one fancy way to get your answers correct. Okay. One, you have to have IC, comma, ing. This rule I've already taught you just a while ago and even in the previous class. Now again I repeat, but with a new concept, you should have to balance the verbs. If the previous verb is ing, the next verb also should be ing. Okay, I taught you one of the concept for subject tenses. So your answer is A. Now, punctuating apostrophes set by commas, let's work on this in the next session. And so I don't want to bombard you with so many types of rules as if now, because